The following program contains a topic which may not be suitable for young viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi there, welcome to Cannabis Conversations, a weekly program that is designed to clear up much of the curiosities, fill in the blanks for some missing information, and with any luck at all, define some of that or clear up some of that misinformation about cannabis and its consumption. I'm your host, Green Irene. I'm a cannabis author, researcher, and educator. Joining me today is Rick Gillman, a man whose wealth of wisdom and continued tireless efforts are lighting the path for many patients and recreational consumers alike. Thank you so much for being here today, Rick.
Oh, my pleasure, Irene.
Well, you know, you and I could spend an awful lot of time talking on 100 different subjects, all related to cannabis, and still not cover everything in a day's time. So what I'd like to do today is focus on the home grow options and some of the details about that. Before we get started, why don't you introduce yourself? There's so much to be said, I didn't know where to begin.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I am a medical cannabis patient. It's done a lot for my health and my life, and that has led me down a path of giving back. I work as a cannabis counselor, so I help patients who get a prescription in a medical cannabis clinic, make the right choices in choosing the right types of cannabis for their conditions. So that's a passion, and it's paying it forward for me. I also, through that process, went down the road of ACMPR, which is the Access for Cannabis, Medical Cannabis. Basically, it's your license to use, and in my case, grow cannabis. So you can actually get a prescription from a doctor, and you can apply to Health Canada to grow your own medicine, which allows you a whole wealth of benefits. The primary one being getting the medicine you need and knowing exactly how it's grown, and it's cost effective. A lot of people, unfortunately, the way the system's set up, can't afford their medicine. And that also led me to doing some breeding projects, and I work with a consortium of breeders globally who are trying to make new strains of medicine, and that led me to begin a seed and topical company.
It's so the industry is so exciting, and the evolution of it as it's coming to the front lines is just super exciting. Again, I said today I'd really like if we can focus on that home grow aspect.
Absolutely.
This is a frightening thing, I think, for a lot of patients. They don't know. We hear so much misinformation. Is it better to grow indoors? Is it better to grow outdoors? Let's look at that, the pros and cons, and we'll start right away with the product.
Okay, so both have different benefits. Growing outdoors, you're going to get a bigger yield. Unfortunately, we live in Canada, so the outdoor season is very limited. You maybe have 4 months to make magic happen. Growing indoors, you have 12 months. You have much better control over your conditions, but not everybody has a place to grow indoors, and there's an equipment cost and so on. So they both have different benefits. The other thing is when you get a grow prescription, there's a formula for how many plants you can grow, and you can grow more plants indoors than outdoors with that formula.
Okay.
So if you have a 1 gram a day prescription, for example, you have a choice of either 2 outdoor plants or 5 indoor plants per gram per day. So if you had a 2 gram a day prescription from your doctor, you could grow 10 indoor or 4 outdoor plants.
Oh, okay. Actually, this is a couple things. I have a few questions later in the show after we've discussed some of that about the details of the legalities or pending legislation.
Yeah.
So the product, indoor and outdoor, is there any difference between the final product, your final crop?
Well, that you could ask 100 growers and get 100 answers to that. The fact is, here's some of the variables that you have to really consider. Outdoors, number one, you're going to have much more likelihood of a pest challenge. Okay. Spider mites and different predatory creatures that are going to find your plant very attractive. So that's going to affect, your potential yield. The other problem is if somebody else is growing anywhere close or even has a hemp field, your plants could get pollinated, and that's not what you want when you're growing medicine. You don't, if you're not trying to produce seeds, you don't really want to get seeds, and you certainly don't want to get seeds that you don't know what they are. So that's another thing, is the pollen may blow onto your plants, pollinate them, then you're going to get seedy kind of flower, and that's a disaster for some people. And then you're at the will of the weather as well. So if you get a bad rainy season, your grow could be scrubbed and then no medicine.
Outdoor farming comes with all the challenges that of cannabis comes with all of the same challenges that growing tomatoes outdoors does.
Absolutely,
okay.
Yes.
So even now speaking of the trichomes, even from the elements in the air, so that's your buds are going to be less sticky. The buds may be puffier from outdoor growth versus indoor growth, but we're not going to have the same amount of trichomes on the outside of that bud.
Potentially.
Now, does that make a difference in the cannabinoid or terpene profiles?
It shouldn't make, the profile shouldn't change, but trichomes are basically the medicine. Just for the uninitiated, trichomes are like little microscopic mushrooms that contain all the medicine in the plant, and they're what gives the cannabis bud the frosty look.
Right.
So if you're getting less trichomes, you're getting less flavor, but it's probably the same flavor, just not as much, and you're getting less potency. So that's a real factor.
Well, now when you say less potency, I found these studies very interesting because there is definitely two sides to that equation. Some people say yes, there's less potency because the cannabinoid profiles are significantly higher in a controlled environment such as indoor growing versus outdoor growing, and yet the sunshine seems to play a significant role in increasing those cannabinoids that are produced in the plants. So THCVA is produced in higher quantities when grown outdoors.
Well, because the ultimate source of light is the sun. The sun contains a full light spectrum, and cannabis responds to a certain spectrum of color. With the sun, you get that whole spectrum. Grow lights have improved radically over the last 5 to 10 years, and so they can mimic much more effectively the multispectral color of the sun, and that's why indoor growing is really kind of expanding more, because unless you're in a nice climate like California, for example, and you have that sun all year round,
right.
To be a medical patient, you really, unless you're a really great outdoor grower, you really are probably better off indoors.
What do you think of greenhouses?
I love them.
I mean,
and I
that's
love the
a combination of both,
Absolutely.
Isn't it? That gives us, that'll give us both the controlled environment as well as all the rays of the sunshine. So back to indoor growing then, especially for a medical patient, your recommendation is that you do indoor growing if you can.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There is an investment of equipment, but like I guide people that do come to the clinic and get a grow prescription, you can get a good starter setup for about $400, which is going to include your grow tent, your light, an exhaust system to regulate both temperature and smell. And that, is a great investment, because if you look at what the licensed producers charge, I'd say on average about $9 a gram to $10 a gram, you're going to probably pay that off in your first grow. And then your medicine becomes very cost effective. It's just basically mostly hydro cost. And there are different lights that require different amounts of energy. So LED lights are still very effective, and they require much less energy than you'd need to use with something like a sodium halide, which is an energy pig, essentially.
I'm sorry, sodium?
Sodium halide and metal halides are very bright grow lights that have been traditionally used, but they use about 1,000 watts for a good one of energy a day.
Okay. So you may not be paying the $10 a gram for your medical marijuana, but you're going to be paying possibly $10 a day for
your hydro bill. Yeah, quite possibly. So, but the LED is a solution to that. Now, there's something new called ceramic metal halides, which are the kind of a midpoint. So they use about half the energy of these traditional sodium halides and more than the LEDs, but they give almost as bright a light as the metal halides.
Okay.
So there's more options coming onto the market. More, it becomes more strategic.
Right. Now I can remember back in younger years, we'll say. Back in younger years, they had to change the light bulb. So you had to have a certain light bulb for, when your plant first out.
Most people use a metal halide for the vegetation stage and then a sodium halide for the flowering stage. The LEDs now can potentially do your whole grow, because, and some of them actually have a switch where you can, that it switches the light frequencies like we were talking about, the colors.
Okay.
So they're making a lot of advances. So yeah, they still have those kind of, the light bulb, you know, changing
Right,
thing.
so you don't...
But you could use a metal halide right through the grow. The light bulb, changing over to the sodium halide, it's a brighter light, so it gives more energy to the flower as when you switch from veg to flower. That's something that you do. It's a choice. Unless you're growing an autoflower, autoflower seeds are very interesting because what they are, they're very good for novice growers. There's two main types of cannabis, as you know. There's your Indica and Sativa, and they have this little cousin called Ruderellus, which is kind of hidden in the background. Yeah. But this is a type of cannabis that has grown naturally in places like northern Russia, where they have a very short growing season. So this plant has programmed itself to grow fast and hardy and short and thick and be ready in the short season. So what breeders have done is they've bred the traditional sativas and indicas with this cousin, and what that's done is change the genetics to give the plant a finite life. So with a regular cannabis seed, you would get, you could prolong the grow period as long as you want. With an autoflower, it's about 60 to 70 days guaranteed.
That's awesome information. I'm going to ask you to hold that thought, and we're going to cut to break. When we return, I have a few more questions on that aspect of it, and then I want to talk about who can grow, who should be growing, and the reasons why we should be growing.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. On that note, we will be returning with Rick Gillman from saucyseeds.com, talking about how to grow your own and
The following program contains a topic which may not be suitable for young viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi there, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in to the Cannabis Conversation with Rick Gillman today from Saucy Seeds, a cannabis consultant out of the Collingwood Clinic. Yeah. We're here discussing, before the break, we were talking about indoor versus outdoor growing and how medical patients should definitely grow indoors, or if they have the luxury of a greenhouse, well, hey, that's the best of both worlds. But you were saying there's a lot of, now with technology, the lights they're not as much work. So a quick question on that. Does it take any sort of special skills to learn how to grow cannabis?
Well, actually it does, unfortunately, but it's like anything you do, you have to learn. I actually recommend to a lot of people a website. I'm not affiliated with it in any way. I just find it a great resource. It's called growweedeasy.com. And they start at the most basic things, which is how to germinate seeds and the different techniques to do that. Some people like to do it in a moist paper towel in a dark place that's warm until the little tails stick out, and then they plant them in the soil. And some people like to go directly to the soil. Some people put them in a cup of water. There's lots of techniques, but they walk you through every step of growing, from the basic things to the types of soils, nutrients, and then the more advanced things like super cropping and low stress training as you become a better grower that you may want to take advantage of to get a better yield and better medicine. Okay,
so it's really a learn as you grow.
Well, that's it. That's it. One of the biggest mistakes that rookies make is not putting a light close to the seedlings when they're young, because what they do is they stretch towards the sun or the light, and if the light's not close enough, they're going to propel too high and fall over and fail. So that's one mistake. A lot of people will come back and say, well, you know,
I was one of them.
Yeah, I think everyone has to go through that once. But growing is a very, one thing for me I found, and for a lot of other people, is it's very therapeutic, the actual act of growing your own medicine. It's something that I didn't anticipate, but there's a very zen-like quality to it.
There is. The one thing I've learned about cannabis is it really is all about whole health. It is mind, body,
absolutely,
soul. It's the four cornerstones: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And it really does cover it all. And yes, there is a nice quality to growing your own and reaping your own harvest. Yeah. So that being said, because there's so much benefit to growing your own, who should?
Well, in my opinion, everyone, and fortunately, everyone can soon. When the impending C-45 legislation goes through that will permit recreational cannabis, on the table right now, potentially every household in Canada will be allowed to grow 4 plants without a permit. And that's going to be wonderful. As I alluded to in an article I think you've read, I have a monthly magazine column on cannabis in Topic magazine. Or Tonic, what do I?
Tonic.
Tonic magazine.
The topic right is,
here,
may I?
Yeah, sure. The topic is cannabis. That's my cover about growing your own. So
I don't know if we can get a, right there? Zoom in on that. Awesome.
Yeah, so what I alluded to is cannabis can now join the natural medicine chest that people can choose to grow, chamomile or aloe vera or all the different natural healthy plants. And one thing people need to know is this plant is a superfood as well. So I'd put it pound for pound against kale or anything else because it's full of antioxidants. It's got omega-3 fatty acids, tons of vitamins and minerals. And the important thing people need to know is if you use the raw plant for juicing in a salad or anything else, it's non-psychoactive. It cannot get you high.
That's right, but all of those cannabinoids can go to work on healing that endocannabinoid system, and with any luck at all, clearing up any deficiency that's in there. What's your opinion on endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome? And I realize this is just opinion.
Yeah. I totally believe it.
It's a new theory.
Yeah, but here's the thing that is exciting medicine. Our CB1 and 2 cannabinoid receptors that we innately have in our brain to process this medicine, they can't process anything else. And we've been studying the brain for literally probably a couple hundred years or longer as a species. And these were just discovered a couple of years ago. And they're in us for a reason. I love to have this argument because if I have it with a religious person, I can say God put them there. If I'm talking to a science-based person who's an atheist, I can say, well, 5,000 years of evolution developed those because we've been using this plant medicinally. They found it in tombs in Egypt.
Well, yes, and recent studies actually, I was just reading a paper from Dr. McCullum himself that was saying that this is an ancient system. This is a system that has aided in our evolution.
Absolutely.
And when we look at it, cannabis has only really been out of our pharmacopoeia or our diet in our area, like in North America, for what, 80 years, 8 decades of prohibition.
Yeah.
It's only been out of our diet. In the last 40 years or so, look at all the autoimmune deficiency conditions and syndromes. I won't get into labeling them now, but yeah, and I digress because I could, again, we could spend a lot of time. It's another show in itself. So if everyone should grow, my 94-year-old grandfather should grow a cannabis plant on his counter. Why?
Well, again, because it's medicine. He doesn't
want it for medicine.
Oh, he doesn't want it for...
He doesn't want it for medicine.
It's aesthetically beautiful.
It is.
It's a beautiful flower. I saw... There's a big trend in some of the trendy places in California and in the U.S. They're doing mini cannabis bonsai decorative plants now. They're growing mini ones to have as household plants. And
They're
why not?
They're beautiful plants.
Yeah.
They really are. They're a beautiful plant, and when you take it out of the soil and you flip it upside down, the roots look just like the branches on the top. I've seen people that have sealed them and use them as home decor. I mean, they're gorgeous things. So everybody should grow. There's plenty of reasons to grow. From a nutritional perspective, my grandfather can also use that as lettuce if he forgot to pick some up at the corner store. He can add lettuce to his
something healthier than lettuce.
Yeah. It probably is, exactly, the amount of nutrients. I read somewhere the hemp seed contains all of the nutrients and essential oils and whatever else it is, essential acids and oils required to sustain human life.
Oh, I don't doubt it.
It thoroughly impressed me.
It's just, it's just another grain, a very healthy grain, and, it's been...
It's an ancient grain.
Yeah, but It's been stigmatized, it's been vilified. We have to step back and start over again. Like I often say to people, we're doing this for my son's generation. We have to normalize this as a society for the next generation to understand that it's medicine, and it can be used recreationally, and there's a lot of controversy with that. But the fact is, I personally believe, and a lot of people agree with me, that it's much less harmful than alcohol, for example, which is our most common recreational substance.
It's what we're familiar with, or what we've been conditioned to utilize for recreation.
Right,
absolutely. Right. And cannabis or marijuana has been pushed off to the side. And
I hate the M word.
I hate the M word too, but a lot of people tuning in, if they just hear cannabis, they're only familiar with the with the M word. Let's move on from there. What strain? So we know now that if you choose indoor or outdoor, medical patients should grow indoors, preferably. Is there, and we're not going to get into it because it's too much of a conversation, the difference between hydroponics and soil-based.
Yeah, that's another.
Yeah, that could take up an entire show. But we've looked at the nutritional value of it. We've looked at whether or not to grow indoor, outdoor. Medical patients definitely should grow indoors so that they have more control over the environment. Recreational users or adult consumers is the new term being used. Should be, they can grow indoors or outdoors, and these are the pros and cons. And anyone else can grow just cause. So there's your logical, your realistic, and your theoretical. What strains would you recommend, or where would you, never mind, not recommend, because everybody's condition is different, but where would you recommend someone go to learn more about what they should grow specifically for themselves if they're growing purposefully?
Okay, again, another resource that I use, and again, no affiliation, is one called www.leafly.com. Leafly will, if you put a strain name in there, you've heard of Gorilla Glue, and you go in there, it will tell you the effects of using that strain for recreational, and then it'll give you a whole set of medical conditions that it's most effective to treat. And so it's a really good resource. Just as a basic rule, the two, again, main types, as you know, are Indica and Sativa. So Indicas are relaxing. They calm you, they mellow you. They help people with things like insomnia, with anxiety. Sativas are stimulating, energizing. They stimulate creative juices. So you have to be careful. Someone with anxiety would really probably respond well to an indica, but a sativa could actually compound their anxiety. And that's what we do as counselors, is we look at the conditions we're treating and we go through. And then the beauty is, breeders like myself, I personally carry about 75 different strains, and a lot of them, quite a few of them are medical hybrids. So we take a sativa and an indica plant that have specific medical properties. We cross them to make one that's going to balance out, so that the person with anxiety is not going to get that negative reaction. It's the indica is going to pull it back. So there's a real science to breeding and to picking the right medicine.
Well, exactly.
And just to interject one more thing, it's very important as someone in the medical field. A lot of people try to self-medicate with street cannabis. And the problem with that, and the primary problem, is you could be using the same source, but your percentages of CBD and THC are going to be very variable. You don't know if they're grown with pesticides or other things. If you're trying to medicate on in a specific manner, you have to have consistency with your medicine. Just wanted to point that out. And when you grow your own from the same strains, you get that.
Thank you so much for saying that. On that note, how would you suggest, we've only got a couple minutes left, how would you suggest someone begin growing? I've heard of starting with clones, and I've heard of starting with seeds. I have my own personal opinion, as I know you do. But please give us the quick, and dirty on it.
Of course, I'm biased because I have a seed company, and I just believe growing from seed is probably, when you're growing from seed, I'm a bit of a purist. I prefer regular seeds. There are feminized seeds and there's autoflower seeds. Regular seeds have the strongest genetics. But having said that, if you grow a really exceptional plant, and that plant's great medicine, taking clones from that plant is very valuable. The problem is purchasing clones is you can be purchasing trouble, because
have no idea
you could have spider mites. Well, even if you know what you're getting, they come with whatever's in them and on them. So I know people who have bought clones from the
reputable sources?
No, or also from just, let's say, the street market, rather than, because the licensed producers do sell clones as well. But then they put them in their tent, and next thing you know, they have an infestation of spider mites or something in their tent that came along with the clones. So you have to be careful. So with seeds, you don't ever run that risk.
Right.
So
it's a much more controlled environment.
Exactly. But now, cloning your own, I think, is really a good thing to do.
Cloning your own versus purchasing clones?
Right, from an outside source, or
correct,
being gifted clones, or any of that kind of stuff that goes on.
Be cautious with the gifts.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, and where can they find more, where can our viewers find more information on how many strains of saucy seeds, how many strains of seeds does the average Canadian supplier have, would you say?
Well, it varies widely.
Okay.
The licensed producers have very, very limited selection right now. They're dabbling in it because they have to, because the ACMPR requires them to, or they're supposed to.
I see.
But they're not enthusiastic. A company I mentioned before, again, not to give them any advertising, but ABCAN, they started off primarily as a clone company, and medical flower was secondary.
Okay.
I talked to them on a professional basis last week, inquiring about a patient. They're out of clones altogether now.
That's crazy.
So it really tells you they're really, and they were trying to get a niche in the market with that, because not many people were doing it. So, you know, the industry right now, the medical industry, is kind of doing it half-heartedly. So it's got to be picked up somewhere.
Again, I can spend the entire day having this discussion. Thank you very much, Rick, for joining me today.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Thank you for tuning in today with Rick Gillman from saucyseeds.com. Be happy, get healthy, stay strong. Ciao for now.